supporting Microsoft's premier customers to better build and manage on-prem, cloud and hybrid integration solutions. So let's welcome onto the stage Saffieldin Ali.
Hello. So luckily enough, I am the last one from Microsoft to speak today. So, forget what Tord have already said, because he was the last one to speak from the product group. So I'm the last one now. So how many of you know the health check process? So almost all of you. So what a stupid question to ask. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is just fast forward to the BizTalk Health Check process that we as a BFAs within Microsoft doing. Actually, I'm doing a health check almost each week for one of our customers. So I'm covering the EMEA team, the EMEA region. So I'm one of the almost 30 people covering the proactive support for the premier customers within Microsoft services. So the session today will be about what and how to do a proper BizTalk Health Check. So before going on how and what, we need to know why. So how many of you know this logo or have seen it before? So because you are British. Yeah, so the MOT basically is a compulsory test for safety and emissions for all of the vehicles in the UK, and I'm assuming that this process actually applies to all of around the world, so it's not a special process in the UK. But basically, they needed to check that everything in the car is running in a safely and environmentally healthier manner. So the important thing here, especially in the UK, they are checking ambulances and taxis each year, no matter what it's doing, no matter how, they check the cars, the ambulances and taxis everywhere. The first reason for that, because they are doing a high number of mileage, so at least they are 10,000 miles per year, at least. And the second thing is, imagine an ambulance is going to pick up some critical situation, some patient in a critical situation and just stop working. So it's not gonna be a great fun. So for the BizTalk side, to reflect this to the BizTalk, so we are doing several things to prevent specific things to happen in the production environment. The first one is to identify symptoms. So sometimes everything is fine and the messages are going through the front end and back end and everything looks good until it's breaks up. So you need to be proactively looking at things before actually affecting production environment. The second thing is reviewing critical processes. So sometimes not all of your host instance or part of the integration solution is actually, all of them are equally critical to the business. Some of them are very, very resource intensive, and actually if one of them fails, this is going to be affecting the whole businesses. And some of them are just, transforming and just copying files from one end to another. The third thing is we need to identify warnings and red flags. And this is pretty important. This is one of the things. I can tell you from my experience in doing health checks, every time I go to the customer, the first thing they are saying, everything works fine and we didn't have any issues. And when I do the PAL reports, everything is red. The other thing is understanding the common mistakes made by admins and developers. So I will show you some samples of these things. So one of these things is just, you sometimes tweak the development environment to, test something like enable all tracking on the whole environment. And you just missed it when you deploy the binding files to the production environment. And you might not thinking about the impact of these checkboxes on the production environment. The last but not least is to understand the supportability life cycle within Microsoft. So one of the important things that people miss is the latest security patches and updates. So one of the things that you will be asked if you open a ticket to Microsoft support, if you have a crit set or a situation, the first question you will be asked, do you have the latest security patches and security updates? If you don't, go and install them and come back to us. Not necessarily if it's a critical situation, we will help you to solve it, but this is one of the things you will be asked for. So the process itself is very simple. So we are doing interviewing, collecting, and then analyzing and reporting. The interviewing part, it's all about one-to-one meetings with the important team members, the admins, the dev teams, all of one of them, and just to collect an operational view of the things. What are the most important part of the solution, how they are structuring things, kind of architecture overview. And the other important part we need to collect is to do a knowledge transfer. So people just didn't pay it, a couple of thousand quids for Microsoft to just do a BizTalk Health Check, because basically all of these information are publicly available over the internet. And I think Todd and several of the MVPs, the esteemed MVPs who are attending today, personally I've been following their blogs for these health checks. But actually we are doing a knowledge transfer. We are passing the information from our side, our business practices, everything in one shot in 3 days. So this is the real value of doing a health check on a customer side. Before going back. The second thing is collecting. So we're running several non-intrusive tools. So I will show some of them in a minute. Things like BHM, BizTalk Health Monitor. We're running some PowerShell script and things like that to collect several bits and pieces of the environment to kind of have a deep analysis of the environment. And after collecting all of these things, and before analyzing this information, one of the things that I'm collecting, and I'm thinking what all of my colleagues are collecting, is the informal information. So some of the developers might say something like, I did something wrong in the last week, but he can't say that in front of his manager, for example. He might say that to me. So that's why the first thing I need to do is just break the ice between me and the team and the customer team to collect these small pieces, to kind of relate the things that I collected and the thing that he already said. And after collecting all of this information, I'm doing analysis and reporting. So I'm doing run another tool called performance analysis logs and other similar tools to kind of, after collecting this information, build a reasonable conclusion to say, these are the things that gone wrong, and this is how to fix it. So these are the things that I consider as a red flag and needed to be further investigated with the people, with the technical teams. The first one is that they might say, we have our own procedure to do database backups. And this is pretty common. You can imagine, you build a BizTalk solution, you hand it over to the operation team, and the operation team might be split to BizTalk admins and SQL Server admins. So the SQL Server admins might not necessarily know that BizTalk has a specific requirement to do backups. So they might, just normal right-click on the database itself and back it up, or they have a kind of central way to back up the BizTalk database, which is completely not supported. You have to run our own procedure to have a proper supported backups. So the second important thing is some customers are saying, we didn't test the disaster recovery, and this is very common. So they might have a hot already environment to kind of to do a disaster recovery exercise, but they have never tested this site to properly migrate or move from the failed environment to the new environment. So similar things like, can you send us information how to install BizTalk? So if you heard the last one, so this means that you are in the wrong place. This has happened, actually. So the check area, I will run very fast through these areas. The first one is the platform configuration for BizTalk Server. At the end of the day, BizTalk Server is a couple of services and a very special database. This might be not fair, but at the end of the day, this is the reality. So this application server is actually running on top of Windows. So I needed to make sure that the current infrastructure in a healthy state. So I need to check the network health, I need to check the disk health, I needed to check the latest service back, things like that. The second thing is the BizTalk specific configuration. So the host separation policy, which is very important for high availability and security and reliability and things like that. I need to check whether or not they implemented kind of, or they have an host separation policy in place. And of course, runtime adjustment, the tracking, the polling intervals, and I will show you some samples of these checks. The performance, for sure, at the end of the day, you still have limited resources, unless you are, running BizTalk on a very expensive, highly capable servers. And I know some of the customers who is actually attending today. They have a very powerful server, which is, they can't reach even 10% utilization of the environment. So I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about the majority of people who have limited resources on their infrastructure. They have limited number of servers, limited number of CPUs, and limited number of memory. So we need to analyze the performance when exactly there is spikes or there is a workload during the day, during a business day. So we need to analyze the performance and how actually this load affect the performance of the environment. Resilience. So I'm pretty sure 90% of the BizTalk customers need a highly resilient environment. So the high availability of the service is #1 priority for them. So just a few of the customers just using BizTalk Standard Edition on one server and SQL box, just few. I've never seen, I don't consider them as a vast majority, just 1-2% of the customers. So to be able to have a resilient environment, you need to have highly available SQL server, highly available BizTalk server, and highly available SSO. And SSO is crucial. And I'm saying to you, SSO is very important. You need to have a highly available SSO, and we'll talk about these things later. The load balancing of HTTP endpoint, whether it's a physical hardware to load balance these endpoint or a software, Windows software load balancing. And as I said, because BizTalk relies on databases, so we need to check SQL Server configuration. So we need to check whether the SQL Server have the latest update, the latest service packs, the placement, which is very common mistake. It's the placement of the database and log files. So you just place all the logs file, the MDF and LDF on the same disk and just leave it like this. This will affect the environment. So we need to check this also at this part. The important part is the disaster recovery, again. And as I said in the beginning, you will not notice any problem with the car until it actually gets nasty on you. So you will not predict anything. You just, suddenly the car will stop working. So this is exactly what's happening with BizTalk. You don't monitor, you don't do anything, you don't do any proactive work. I'm pretty sure it will stop working on your face. Security and the BizTalk application management and monitoring. So security means that if you have a specific security concern, you need to isolate the specific BizTalk artifacts. You need to assign all of these workload to specific host instances to isolate them. Or if you have an unreliable adapters, like an open source adapter. So you don't want to run these adapters on the important host instances. Of course, there is the MSDTC security configuration. You don't want to check all of the boxes in the MSDTC because basically you will be opening a kind of port to people to call you. So you need to wisely check all these checkboxes. It will work and it might be fine on your dev machine, but it's absolutely not fine on a production environment. The BizTalk monitoring, so as I will be discussing this further a little bit, you might have all of the good tools, all of the monitoring tools, unless you don't do anything upon the findings, it's useless. So these are the list of tools. Some of them we are using them, some of them it depends. So the first one is the MBSA, the Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer. So the Baseline Security Analyzer is just and by the way, all of these tools are Microsoft tools, so that you can download and now, if you want. So the MBSA is just a tool to check whether or not you have the latest security patches and security updates on all of the servers. And the second one is the best practices analyzer. And the best practices analyzer might be a little bit too old. It's not relatively new, but we might use it to check specific things in the environment. And the Swiss Army knife in the BizTalk Health Check is the BHM. It's a very important tool, and our support team and our BizTalk Health Monitoring team are doing a great job, specifically starting from version 4 upwards. So these tools, and I will be deep diving into it, it's a very useful tool to check all of the BizTalk environment, from infrastructure to the runtime itself. And of course, all of the 3 tools, or the top 3 tools, are just to collect data, and the fourth one is just to analyze them. So the performance analysis log, which is an open source tool written by a Microsoft guy called Clint, this tool is actually analyzing the performance counter output and create a very visualized and useful chart out of them. So the first thing in the platform configuration, this is basically one of the output of the baseline security analyzer. So most of the customers are saying, when I show them this, they are saying, we didn't have any security problems, so why I can't bother? So my answer is this: okay, let's wait until you get a ransomware, and you will, probably appreciate it. So this is one of the things I'm finding this missing security updates. The second one is this: default tracking enabled on all of the ports. So people just leave them alone. So what this window is just doing, just tracking every single event in an orchestration and every single message as is being submitted to the tracking databases. If this is what is required by you, I've been working with BizTalk for almost 7 years. I didn't find any situation that I needed to do that unless I'm on a production environment. So if you need to track your data, you need to use the lightweight PAM. The PAM is a very lightweight. You just track a specific information and intercept the specific information from the message itself, instead of just taking the whole message, whatever the size of it, and submit it to a database. Pulling intervals. So this configuration needed not to be changed unless you have a very low latency requirement. So if this is the case, you need to really configure them very regularly. If you have a low latency scenario, you need to change this. Otherwise, just leave them. And this is not all of the customers are just changing this, but you can stretch the host capabilities based on your estimation. So you can assign global physical memory usage and global process virtual for these hosts if it requires, specific capacity to grow within. Otherwise, the BizTalk has an automatic throttling that will automatic based on the availability of the resources that it has. So if you have 12 gigs, this will consume, 6 gigs out of them. The host will throttle just to kind of not accepting messages and just stop. It will start queuing the messages but not processing them unless it will, release what's in the queue right now. So BizTalk monitoring, and this is one of the important topics. So of course, you can use BizTalk 360. It's a very useful product you can use to monitor BizTalk, and actually, I personally have been fascinated about the work that they have done in the last 1.5 years to kind of take in all of these useful features in it. But at the end of the day, if you have BizTalk 360, and you have BHM, and you have any other parties, and I've seen customers have all of these tools and they don't utilize it, or they installed it and utilize them, but they don't act upon the findings out of them in a proper time. So just, we just see problems, and they might take 6 months to address these problems, which is not too good. So This is the screen of the BHM, the BizTalk Health Monitor, which, as I said, it's the Swiss Army knife to kind of execute loads of rules and queries to all of the BizTalk servers and just to check the health of it. So starting from release 4, we have 2 profiles. So you can create a BizTalk Health Check profile, and the other profile is the monitoring profile. So the first one is just runs for a minute or 2 minutes and just collect the information, and that's it. And the other one is just a continuously collecting information from the environment for you. So things like you can be notified if one of the SYN ports have been unlisted or disabled for any other reason. It's kind of, in terms of these feature, specifically if something went wrong in the environment, the notification is not as much powerful as the BizTalk 360, but at least you have the basics that can notify you at least. So what is the BHM? Actually, it's the snap-in. You can download it, install it in 2 seconds, and it will be part of the BizTalk Administrator Console. And these tools and rich queries are being produced by Microsoft, so it's completely our product. So it used to support, how many of you know the MBV? So quite, yeah, that's good. So MBV, Message Box Viewer, it was a tool to, so let's say the BHM is the evolution of MBV. So we used to have an old tool to collect BizTalk telemetry or information about the health of the environment. So we built on top of that BHM. So it's now supporting 2016, and actually Samuel, he is a BFE, he's actually dealing with the creator of the BHMs to add list of checks for the always-on availability groups and things like that. So, yeah. So it runs 200 queries, and all of these queries are being produced by Microsoft support. So it's not something, you just download it from the blogs or the internet, so you can run it safely, because we test it and we know that these queries are non-intrusive. Non-intrusive means it will not affect the production health and capability. So this is the new feature in the version 4, which is the continuous monitoring. So as you can see, you can create a monitoring profile, and this monitoring profile will run a Windows service or a task, automated tasks, to kind of continuously collecting information from the environment and query the environment. So whether or not you have port disabled or enabled or unlisted, whether or not you have a massive growth of your DTA. So instead of suddenly find that your DTA is just grown to 20 gigs or something of data in just 1 day. So you need to be notified about that. So these are some of the use cases. So the continuous monitoring. So again, continuous monitoring, this is the basic continuous monitoring. It's not the complete, and as I said, you can't compare the continuous monitoring with, kind of commercial products like BizTalk 360, but at least this is a free product, guys. Just download it and install it. And of course, the periodic health checks with email notification. So you can automate the health check. So you can say, I need to run a health check report on all of my environment in a weekly basis and just send me the output. So this is very handy. So one of your, I personally, I'm saying to the customers to just schedule this and just put it in your mailbox. And one of the things that you need to do every week is just check to see what's happening inside of it. So one of the new things, again, and I think it's, I don't know when was the version that you loaded with the perfmon. So usually, to run the performance counter, we exported a list of counters for you, and then you run a PowerShell script or a CMD to create a data collector set in perfmon. So you don't need to do that now. You just open the BHM, right-click, create counter. It will be created for you. So whether it's a continuous or scheduled one, So continuous minutes will be run indefinitely to collect information, or you need to run it to, you need to schedule it to run for 24 hours, 48 hours. Performance analysis. So this is the PAL. This is the PAL tool that I was talking about. First window, the important window, is this. This is the threshold files. So almost all of the Microsoft services and server, we have created a specific list of counters to check specific outcome or information out of it. So this tool you can easily export these counters and create your own. But now with BHM, you don't need to use that. You don't need to export them, because for BizTalks at least, you need to create another one for SQL Server. So one of the tips from my side is to answer each one of these tabs carefully. So I'm doing this mistake until this day. So these mistakes, just one of the questions you will be asked, how many memory do you have in each box? So sometimes you may say, especially at the very large environment, you might have 5 servers, but the first 3 servers have 16 and the other ones have just 8. So when you're queuing them, you just continue 6, 16, 16. And if you keep next, it will add the 16 to the wrong server, which has just 8 gigs of RAM. So it's not good to just leave that, because basically what Bell will be doing is just relate the outcome to the available memory. So it's say you have 16, and the BLG file was saying you was reaching 15, for example. So if you have 25, 15 is not a problem. But if you have 16 and you reached 15, it's a really, really big problem. Choose the correct threshold option. And this is a very important one. So this is about comparing the sampling that the BLG is actually comparing to. So how many samples you needed to be taken from the BLG file and compare. Do you want it every 3 seconds? Do you want it 5 seconds? Or want it every minute? So you need to choose this carefully. And you can use this one to create a perfmon counter for, again, you don't need to use that for BizTalk if you are using BHM, but you need to use this option to SQL Server. Okay, this is the output. This is the BAL output. So basically, you will see a list of charts, list of visualization about what's happening. So on the left-hand side, you can see there's a graph saying, for example, this is the disk read and write. It can tell you that there was a spike at the specific time, and you need to think about why was this happening. Maybe because you were doing a backup, or there is a data A kind of work, or there is a maintenance window, or maybe it's a business spike that's causing it, but you need to find an answer to these kind of things. And when you see this chart, underneath them, you will see a table that contains what was the problem, when it was happening, and where it happened on each server. One of the things I want to say that you need to, this is a good tool, and this is the tricky part. By experience, you will need to know, and you will know that not everything in this in the report is actually kind of critical things or problematic things. So if it's acceptable, for example, if you had a spike for just 1 second in a 24 hours day and it's red, it will not be red for most cases. But if it's acceptable by the business and this is some of your workload, so don't worry, unless it's consistent spike. So for 1, 2, 3 hours, the performance was degraded heavily. You need to worry about it. So let's show you the BHM. So this is basically the BizTalk admin console, and yeah. So this is the admin console itself. And as I said, the BizTalk Health Monitor is just a snap-in like the event viewer or the BizTalk admin console itself. And this is the version 4. This is the BizTalk Health Monitor, and there is a whole list of useful links to kind of how to maintain and how to troubleshoot and how to do BirthMon in BizTalk. So I've created 2 profiles. The first one is the monitoring profile, and the second one is the normal health check profile. So right-click on the profile and just check the profile settings. It will show you the profile name that you need to create. And imagine that you have multiple groups, so dev, test, product, or pre-prod, or whatever the environment that you need to have. So you need to create several profiles for each one of these groups. So you need to hook up to different databases there. And you need to assign the usernames and password. And this is the information level. So how deep you want the BTM to collect information. So some of these on the left-hand side, the query level on the right-hand side, sorry, some of these information might not apply to you. So if you don't use BAM, for example, so you don't need to check it in the first place, or BRA or any other of the accelerators, for example. So what I'm doing, usually, I'm collecting everything in the BizTalk Health Check. I don't want to go back to the customer and just, I missed to collect the specific information. So I'm collecting everything, but this is because I'm doing this for, 1 hour or something, and just that's it. But for you, you need to collect the relevant information, especially if you are scheduling this. And this is the notification window. So you can be notified by email, and you can assign the SMTP server to kind of send you a message based on that, or even zip the whole report to you and pass it to your inbox. And this is the schedule window, so you can run it every day, every minute, or and this is 2 differences here. You can run a Windows task schedule or Windows server. So some of the central infrastructure requirement or security requirement, they will not allow you to run a Windows service, or they might be very cautious about these things. So you can run this as a Windows task schedule to overcome this. And this is the list of queries. So if you have anything curious about it, you can see them here, and you can test it and see the properties out of them. So as I said, this is a 200 plus query to be run. So the last thing I want to show in the BizTalk profile is the SQL store. So you can create a database, and all of these files will be put into, instead of just sending to your inbox. So this might be more relevant. So this SQL store is not, SQL database is not very structured as you might imagine. It's not a relational database that have the queries and the output. Just a very basic database that at least will contain the history of the profiles themselves. So this is the PHM Health Check profile. The other thing I want to show is the monitoring profile. So as I said, the difference between these 2 things is the monitoring profile is just running indefinitely or for a period of time that you define in the process itself, and you can act upon things on it. So if I run the profile and just open the profile settings, these are the things. So you don't need to do scheduling, because basically this will be running for a period of time until you right-click and stop it. So the same window as the other one. But where is the... Yeah. So you can see that this one, this is the output. It actually said that the SQL jobs are running. And this is the severity of the problems that you might have. This is the backup job. This is the message box cleanup is not configured and it's not running. But this is okay because this is my dev machine, so I don't care. This is a tracking. So it says that must body tracking for some receive ports. So I was blaming the dev guys, but I'm doing it. But again, this is my dev machine. I didn't deploy these things to a production environment. So let's get back to the slides. So resilience, as I said, it's a traditional high availability for SQL Server databases. This is how it looks. You have an active passive or active passive configuration for your SQL Server. This is for the traditional model. If you are using 2016 model, it's going to be like this. So you have different replica, primary replica and lots of secondary replica, but we have a little limitation right now. You need to have at least 4 SQL instances to be running to have this. But the good news is this is a HR and a disaster recovery solution in one place. You need to do lots of work to make it running, but we hope this limitation for the 4 instances will be addressed in the future. Disaster recovery, I have very few notes about disaster recovery because this is very important for the 5 nines customer. So backup is good, but this is just a half of the way. You just backed up, but if you have no idea how to restore it, you didn't do anything, unfortunately. So consider using BizTalk log shipping. And when I say consider using it, I mean that you need to test it. It's not a recommend. It's a must. It's not. It might seem like it's an optional thing. You need to use log shipping and test it and make sure that you can take any of your backups and restore it to your disaster DR site. SAN systems. It's not all of the customers have the capability to use the SAN system, but it's very disk efficient and high performant kind of systems. Again, practice disaster recovery. And I included useful links for you to download once you get there. So last but not least, I want to say just one word. So the Microsoft integration community is awesome. And this is and I want to be honest with you. Gartner will not tell you that we are, as a community, maybe the most influential and most important part of this society, because basically none of our competitors have this. We don't have people are continuously blogging and helping each other. We don't have these kind of, they don't have these kind of events each year. They don't have this relationship between the creators of the products and the MVPs, for example. So I want to say thank you for all of the community members. Personally, I've been reading all of your blogs, and you kind of helped me a lot in my early days. So thank you so much.